Oh, hello everyone. Welcome to the Economox Garage. Come on in. Now, one of the issues that occurs quite often on Bug-Eye Sprite steering wheels is that the horn push doesn't want to stay inside the steering wheel. And there's a couple of causes to that. One of those being that these little clips on the side here, this one, and there's two of them, and this one here, have little teeth in them that catch on the edge of the inside of the wheel. And you can see here where there's some grooves kind of worn into the wheel itself, there and there, and after a while these teeth don't start to grip. The other issue that happens on occasion that this contact, which is spring loaded, goes in and out, is too long and doesn't retract far enough, which in turn doesn't allow the horn push to seat properly all the way down. Well, you can see here I've taken the two little clips off, and I've also removed that contact, which is, you can see, is spring loaded. So what I've done is I've just got the horn push put into place, and you can see it's quite nice and snug all the way around. Fortunately, mine does have a bit of a crack in it, but I'm okay to live with that. So I'll pop the contact into its hole in the steering wheel, and that's now in place. And we'll try and put this back on. Now there's only one way that this can go back into the steering wheel. It's keyed. There's a little notch or a little tab here that goes into a notch that lines up with this contact. And so if I put this on here like so, that's as far as the horn push will go on. So I know it's definitely too short. So I'll measure that and shorten the contact accordingly. I've measured this gap at about 4 millimeters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut 5 millimeters off the end of the plunger. Actually, it goes in the steering column this way, or steering wheel this way. I'll cut 5 millimeters off that end. And I may end up having to cut a little bit off the plastic here. I have to see how far this goes in. And so we'll give that a try and see what happens. Okay, I have the plunger mounted in my vise, and I've marked this at 5 millimeters back from the tip. And I'm just going to use my little Dremel cutoff wheel to cut that. So I'll get that done. I'll round it off a bit, and then I'll go and test fit it in the car. And again, I may have to just trim this plastic back a little bit. We'll have to see how that works out. And I've got my vise set up here, so I'm not pinching the actual plastic part, just grabbing onto the metal part of the plunger itself. Okay, you can see I've got it cut off now, and I'll just round this off a bit and then try to fit it in the car. Okay, here's my shortened horn contact. I'll call it that. Let's get it in the hole in there. Push it into place, and we'll see what happens with the button itself. And there we go. That's all nice and tight down there, and nice and even all the way around, and it's still making good contact. So I don't think we'll have an issue with it working. Okay, a success on that part. Now I'll get to the other part. Okay, I've tested the horn and it works. So I'm just going to turn the steering wheel. Here's where those little clips register in here. And just by feeling it with my finger, those are quite deep. And it's not a surprise that they're not holding the horn push in. So one of the tricks that I learned about here to solve this issue is to mix up some JB Weld and fill this in so it's a nice smooth surface inside the steering, or inside this cavity here. So I'll do the both on the same side, and I'll sand it down so it's nice and level. I'll just give it a touch of black paint, not that you'll see it anyway, and then that will give the teeth on these little clips something to bite into. So in order to do this, repair the inside of this, I'm going to remove the steering wheel. I'll just make some kind of mark on here so I know to put it back in the right place, because I know that is straight where it is. So I'll pull that off, we'll move over to the bench and get to work on the JB Weld. Okay, I have the steering wheel off the car, and you can see there's quite a deep gouge in here where those little clips dig in. And on the other side here, actually this side's not quite as bad, but it is very, very noticeable. So my intent is to mix up some JB Weld, fill in those spots there, and the ones on the other side over here, being careful not to get any into this notch here. This is where the horn push is indexed to that. And you see that hole there is where the spring-loaded contact goes through. So let's get the JB Weld mixed up, and I'll put it into place. Then we'll have to wait for that to set up, and then we can sand it down to get it nice and smooth around the perimeter here. Okay, I'm not going to have to mix up very much of this at all. So I've got my little dab of the one part of it, that's the hardener, and you just use an equal size dab of the epoxy steel resin. And so try and get these as close to equal as possible. And I'm just going to mix them up until the color's nice and even. I'm just using a small screwdriver to do that. I'll clean the screwdriver off before we put it away. So that should give me plenty of epoxy or JB Weld to put into these spots here. So that's that one. And the other one is on this side here. I'll just have a look at that. And I think that has done the trick. So we now have to leave that to set up. And I'll be able to sand that at this future point. I'll just clean off the screwdriver here. And what I'm using to mix this on is just a stack of Post-it notes, and that way I can just peel that off and dispose of it. So there we go. We've got JB Weld into here and into there. And we'll let that set up, and then I can come back and sand it down. I can always put a little bit more in if I need to, but I think that will solve the issue of the horn button popping off. So with the steering wheel off, you can see the brass ring or the contact ring around the dashboard trim for the steering column, and the fixed end of the plunger rides against that through the steering, so that goes through the steering wheel and contacts with that and just turns with the wheel, and the other end of the plunger goes up against this contact point on the horn push. And then when you push the horn itself, there's a contact inside the horn, and that completes the circuit by going to ground, and the horn goes off. So I can see the JB Weld in this spot here, and if I turn the steering wheel, it's in that spot there. So that takes 4 to 6 hours to set up, so I'm just going to leave that overnight and then come back to that tomorrow. And in case you're wondering, the previous owner of this bug eye had sourced a refurbished original steering wheel, which I was quite happy to have. And I'm going to run with that for a while here, and perhaps at some point in the future I can upgrade to something a little more sporty. So I have two horn pushes available to me, and I've picked this one to use. Cleaned it up with some headlight lens restorer to bring back some shine to the plastic here. And then I picked the best two of the four clips that hold the horn push inside the steering wheel. And I'll put those on this one here. And then once the JB weld is set up and I've got it sanded down a bit, I can reinstall the steering wheel in the car with the plunger and with the horn push. So I'm not too sure how clear that's going to be. Oh, it's pretty clear. You'll see on these clips there's a pair of teeth pointing out and a pair of teeth pointing in. The teeth pointing in grip the side of the horn push itself, and then the teeth pointing out grip inside the steering wheel, so that when you install the horn push, the teeth are forced into the horn push itself, into the side of the steering wheel. Well, I'm back to work on the steering wheel. It's been left overnight, and the JB weld is really set solid. So there's this spot here, and then the one over here by the indexing notch. So I'm just going to get some sandpaper and then sand that down so that it doesn't interfere with putting the horn push in. Okay, I have the two spots cleaned up, the one here and the one over here. And the horn push fits in quite nicely. That's without the clips, so it goes all the way down. So I'm quite happy with that. So I can now go and put this thing back on the car. Okay, I've got the steering wheel back on, using the marks that I used to line things up. And it's hard to see, I just used black marker on there. So before I put the plunger back in, I'm going to put on the star washer and the nut, and then I'll get my, it's either 27mm or 1.125" or 1.16" socket to tighten that up. And once that's tight, I'll put the plunger in, and then I can put the horn push back on. There we go, that's got the steering wheel on. Now I'll put in the modified plunger. It goes in right there. And last but not least, you put on the horn push itself. I'll just push it in so the teeth grab that. And there we have it. Horn push is all the way in, all the way around. A little bit more here. There. And there we go. Well, that's a wrap for this week. Thanks for joining me. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to share it with your friends. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Don't forget that little bell icon. Click on that, you'll get notified when the next video comes out. If you'd like to get a hold of me directly, you can do so at the email address I'll put at the bottom of your screen, and it'll also be in the description below. My name is Ian. This is the Econobucks Garage. We'll see you next time.